look at how we can animate. We're going to say this is our rows right here. And let's see how we can connect the rows to Momo and also not have it connect to them. So I have a few things going on. Inside Momo local, I have this local constraint right here. And then I have a world constraint, and I have the rows CTL, which I call control, and I have the rows geo. So the rows geo I can animate as I want to. Alright, it moves around as I need it. Alright, but right now it is connected to the world. So if I want to move Momo, the rows is not going with that. So let's just look at this. Let's say, for example, frame 1 here, I'm going to have the rows fall down from the sky and connect to Momo, and Momo catches it in his mouth or something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my world here, and I'm going to put it maybe up here. Okay. And now what I want to do is I need to animate the rows falling down to the local. The way I do that is I'm going to animate for the rows to go from world to local. And that is I go rows control here. I select my constraint, and I have two types of things. And this one is local con. This one is world constraint. Okay. Alright. And you'll see here that the influence is at 1. So I'm going to put a keyframe here. And then I'm going to go to maybe frame 10. Oh, sorry. And then I need a keyframe on influence 0 for local. So right now it's 0 for local, 100% for world. Then I might go to let's go to frame 5. So we can see this a little bit better. Frame 5, it's going to fall kind of fast. Now I'm going to put this one at 1, keyframe it. This one at 0, keyframe it. And you notice that it just switched from world to local. That's because my world constraint has 0 influence and my local has 100% influence. And then you're going to see this thing kind of move between the two of them. Alright? Now, Momo catches it in his mouth, and he's going to have a keyframe, and he's gonna move backwards a little bit over here. So you can see here this lands in his mouth, and then he moves backwards. If I move Momo here, and you see that thing, it lands right there, right? Alright, so it's not connected to Momo yet. It's only going to be connected to Momo around here. I might actually copy these keyframes right here. He lands, boom, and then he goes backwards. He catches it and he moves backwards. I'm not going to do squash and stretch. This is more about the constraints. So now he jumps up and down. Jumps up, he lands, but now he's going to drop it and walk away. Alright, he's going to drop this and walk away. So I'm just going to... So you can see here the rows is connected to the local. It goes wherever he goes, But now if I want to drop it, it's gonna just, if I'm gonna move him away, it follows, and that's gonna be annoying. So now I need to connect it to the world again. So I'm gonna move this world, and I need this world to be keyframed. Alright, so right about here, I'm going to take the world, and I'm going to move it to where I want this thing to drop. So this is where it's going to drop there. Now it might seem a little bit annoying because you can see the word world and you can see the word local, but when we render, you're going to notice there's no world, there's no local. I didn't set up my camera yet. Okay, so I have the word local and world, but when I actually render this, you're not going to see those. So they're only there when you're animating. Okay? And if you get annoyed with them and you don't want to see them, you can always turn off the eyes. Not this one, local and world. So if you don't want to see them, you can do that. And the reason they're not rendering is I turned off the camera. That means no rendering. Alright? Okay. So now I wanted to animate dropping of the rows. So now I'm going to go here, put a keyframe for both of these, and maybe it'll take just 2 frames to drop this. And I'm going to bring the influence here down and the influence here up. And that was kind of weird, right? It like started to move a bit, but don't forget to keyframe. Let's move this to 16, and then it goes there. Alright, so it moves down, and now before, let's turn off world, let's turn off local so you can see how it works. So now you'll notice the rose is following with Momo here. If I rotate it, that thing goes with me. Alright, but here, now it's when I move Momo, I'll just keyframe Momo's location, and then he's gonna move over here, away from the rows, location. So now this thing is connected to the world and not to Momo. So that's how these constraints work. It's a bit strange. The weirdest thing here is keying between the two areas. So as you saw here, let's turn world and local back on. All right, you see that it kind of falls forward a little bit, and that's because the influence of these two constraints are at 0.5, so it's going back to a default position. One of the ways that you can get around that problem is you could also go here, world, and you could animate the world. So I'm going to just go location. I'm going to put a keyframe on the location, and actually I'm going to animate the location all the way down here. So this is another way to do it, but it's a little confusing because world and local are constrained together. And now this thing right here, if I keep my influence for the world to be 100 until here, keyframe this as I went down. Did I bring this down? Location. Okay. So now it only switches over. It only switches over to local right here. So then it doesn't have such a jump between the two. It's a little bit complicated, but it's a way to animate an object between a 3D world and 3D space, and it means you don't have to counter animate. I hope this is helpful.